3, 2, 1. Welcome back, Bulldog fans, to Jordan-Hare Stadium, Pat Dye Field, where the number 7th ranked Tigers lived up to their ranking tonight, played a really sound offensive, defensive, special teams game, and just put a whipping on Mississippi State up 21-0 before the team, I guess as George Moore had said, before the stands even settled down. And from that, Auburn never looked back.
You know, David, there is an expression that every dog has.
Careful here.
Every dog has his day. Yeah, you're right. I could come up with a lot of modifiers for this one, but here's the deal, David. This was not Mississippi State's day for a lot of reasons, and I don't know if there's a little story today. I don't know if you're aware of. It was such a bad day. The Mississippi State cheerleaders' bus broke down on the way to the game, had to be picked up, and so then we get here and we have this auspicious beginning where Mississippi State takes the field. Very first play of the game, there's a delay of the game penalty on Mississippi State. Then you give up a sack, and the next thing you know, you're behind the chains and you got to go punt, and then you get a delay of game penalty on a punt. And that's one of those things you look at, and I think a lot of fans really kind of voiced their frustration on social media, and it was justified. You just simply can't go out. The Bulldogs clearly were not ready to play today.
And some of the players did say that the crowd sort of got into them, which, you know, first road experience, some of those guys, I get it. But a lot of those guys have played on SEC stadiums before and won at SEC venues. Very disappointing they would let that rattle them in all sorts of situations, and we'll get to one of those later on in particular. But then you talk about the first play of the game, delay a game, when you've got no time's even run off the clock and you're getting a penalty because you can't get your offense out there in time to run a play. All right, first play of the game defensively. As I put on Twitter, not trying to be too cruel, but the truth is the only Bulldog to touch Auburn's running back on that first touchdown was the Bulldog, Jack. And by the way, we understand that Jack is fine. We saw him on the sidelines at the end. He seemed in good spirits. But funny aside, that was just a terrible way to get a game started.
And again, David, back to this whole thing of every dog having his day. Not even our dog had a good day. You know, I mean, it was just one of those things. I'm not trying to make light of it. Guys, this was a terrible performance by Mississippi State, and we can use tons of adjectives to describe it, but I don't know if we could be any more descriptive than that. It was terrible. So there was failures on offense, there was failures on defense, there's failures in special teams, there's failures in getting the play in time, there's failures of having the right personnel group on the field. It was just a complete breakdown of football. And listen, last week against Kentucky, things went pretty well for the most part. A couple of freshman mistakes, but you know, you were able to kind of outrun those mistakes because of the fact you were so good in other phases of the game. There is nothing outside of the fact today that you can say, you know what, Garrett Schrader came in and gave Mississippi State a lift again. And if nothing else, maybe Mississippi State found their quarterback.
Oh, I don't think that's a question right now. We know who the starting quarterback should be, even if Tommy Stevens is healthy. And by the way, it was described as a lower body injury this time, and we saw him walking out with a boot on his left leg, and Coach Moore had said he kind of aggravated one of his upper body situations. And by the way, Garrett Schrader, you saw, had a wrap on his left leg, maybe a little hitch in his giddy-up as he's walking around, but he seemed to be pretty well okay. But we'll talk about that in a minute, too. When State gives up the first 2 touchdowns so easily and then fumbles the kickoff, another of many breakdowns this season, special teams, a missed PAT, coverage issues, all sorts of things. Again, we can go down that trail. But what it comes down to is State got rattled, fell behind a team they could not afford to fall behind, and even when the offense came alive with Schrader, it was just too much to try to ask to make up, especially when they can't put some points up on a play where right before halftime. On replay, it's hard to say if Farrod Green's butt was on the ground when the ball broke the plane or not. It was going to stand, as it was called, but it was so close. If you get that, at least you feel better about yourself. Auburn comes back and scores another touchdown, which pretty well summarized the night.
Yeah, well, David, it was very reminiscent of the Alabama. Excuse me, it's been that kind of night.
They've just mowed the field, as you can tell behind us, so the pollen is flying.
Yes, absolutely. It was so reminiscent of that first half debacle in Tuscaloosa last year where you get down low and you think Colin Hill's gotten in, and all of a sudden there's this stupid penalty that was not even a real penalty that gets called. That's what it felt like. And, you know, when those things are happening, you just kind of begin to say, you know what, it's not our night. But a lot of the issues that Mississippi State had today were self-inflicted. And that's the thing I think that is so frustrating behind all of this is, you know, listen, it's one thing to come to Auburn. We have taken some really good football teams to Auburn and come home with a loss. And I think this is a good Mississippi State team. I don't know that we're an elite team. Certainly don't believe that. But this was an Auburn team that wanted to make a statement. They were thoroughly embarrassed last year in Starkville, and they came out early with Mississippi State's help and jumped ahead 21-0, and before you know it, the ballgame's over.
And let's also make clear for everybody who compares scores, which we all do, both they were doing it here with their rival, Mississippi State's doing it here with their rival as well. Auburn was more motivated to play today. They're chasing the lead. Alabama was holding serve, but Auburn's a team right now, after beating A&M and now beating Mississippi State, feels they have a shot, but they know they have no margin for error. So they came out and played like a team with everything to play for. What disappointed me most, Steve, was State came out, again, we go back to a first penalty before you even snap the ball. They just looked completely unprepared for kickoff today. I don't know how to explain it. I'm not even sure the coaches and players can explain it, but that's what it looked like.
I think the main thing you're missing right now, and again, I don't, we make a lot of emotional judgments, but we've had some time to kind of come to grips with this loss because it was pretty much over in the first half. But this team is in bad need of a leader. As we saw last year, Jeffrey Simmons, Jonathan Abram, Nick Fitzgerald, those are guys, even Eris Williams in a diminished capacity was still a leader in this locker room. This is a team, when you go into an environment like this, it's just simply not good enough to come out here and panic and hand extra possessions to a quality team like Auburn. And listen, Auburn, the best Auburn teams are when Gus Malzahn is fighting for his job and has his back against the wall. We saw it 2 years ago when they won the SEC. They beat Georgia and Alabama. It's kind of like that again now. But the reality of the situation is Mississippi State lost to a better football team, but Mississippi State aided in their own demise.
And look bad in the process, which is what hurts people more, because in college football, unlike pro, appearances count in those situations. And State just got thoroughly humiliated in the first half. And yes, Coach Dormer, he drew a penalty late in the game, and I think it was kind of justified because he saw a clear face mask and targeting that were not called, and State's ended up having to punt the ball. He draws a conduct foul there, which he said you had to stand up for team. I get that. But this is a team which sometimes seems to be a little bit nice, a little bit soft, and then when they overreact, they draw penalties like taking tackles out of bounds or targeting or things like that. They don't seem to know how to handle emotionally, and I think that plays into what you say, Steve. They need some guys to step forward. Despite being a true freshman, could Garrett Schrader be one of those guys to say, hey, guys, this is not how we're going to play this game? That's a lot to ask for a kid, but right now he seems to be the guy you almost have to ask to do it.
Well, at least offensively, because Colin Hill is the bell cow of the offense. But Colin is not a real vocal guy. That's just not in his makeup. And listen, he is going to play hard for you all 60 minutes, every ball game. He would have been out there running a Wildcat if he had to because he wants to go win. But you're right, David. I think Garrett is kind of emerging as that guy because the players respect him. And you could see when he came into the game and they get the score, there was a lot more energy in the team. And if memory serves me correct, David, and it may not because the 90s were really tough on me, but I believe this is 3 consecutive games where he's coming in relief. In the very first drive, Mississippi State cashed in and scores. You know what happened against Southern Miss, and I believe that was the case when Kansas State, after the interception and fumble return, State goes down and scores. Same thing here. Garrett has kind of been instant offense for this team, so it is clear this team is playing hard behind him.
So a hugely disappointing evening. We expected State to struggle tonight, and let's be honest, we picked State to lose. We have to, because we're honest. We're not going to blow smoke and say that we expected to win every game. We knew Auburn was the better team. They're not that much better. They're better, but they're not that much better. State aided and abetted in their own demise. Now, you have an open date. Coach Moorhead said, of course, they have Monday off as usual. Tuesday, they will do a self-scout type of practice on what opponents do defensively and offensively. But interestingly, Steve, he said Wednesday and Thursday, they're going to start already on Tennessee prep. Very interesting comment because it reflects the fact that you and I both know Tennessee is an absolute must-win now.
There's no doubt about it. And here's the thing, too, David, back to your earlier point. I think most Mississippi State fans expected to lose this ball game. This was not a great matchup, but with Auburn being a great running team and State being a little bit loose, shall we say, with experience when it comes to defensive tackle. We knew they would come in here and run the football. We didn't expect them to come out here and embarrass State, and that's really the thing today. But it's not just losing the ball game that stings. It's how you lose, and it does make up now. Yeah, you want to go win the game at Tennessee, but you need to see this team play a clean ball game. They haven't done that all year. They're 3-2 right now, should be 4-1, but the bottom line is State has not played clean football. Yeah, you win the turnover margin. You do some great things there, but the bottom line is What are you doing on the scoreboard? Because we can talk about time of possession, we can talk about first downs, we can talk about all that stuff, but it's all about points, and Mississippi State gave up way too many tonight and left a lot of points on the field themselves.
So this coming week, again, a bye week, Mississippi State will be off. We will get one post-practice availability this week. I think it's going to be Tuesday from what we were told, so we'll have a chance to talk to Coach Moorhead. Maybe a few players. We're not sure how that stacks up right now. Certainly we'll be asking, has Garrett Schrader won the starting quarterback job, which to all intents and purposes he probably should have by now. Secondly, what's the team's mindset? And third, what can be changed? Because now you're going into a must-win situation at Tennessee in terms of if you want to make a respectable bowl this season, that's one of the games you have to win at this point. Obviously, Willie Gay and Lee Autry did not play tonight. Other suspended players, Marcus Murphy, Travis Johnson, and Devontae Jason. That was not a surprise. But all the people who said they should have played tonight, no. Now the wisdom of saving them holds up. It would not have changed the game. So anyway, we'll talk about what we can. Steve and I will discuss what we hear in Tuesday's presser for one of these videos, and then we'll just advise you to try to enjoy the open date because we sure intend to. For our team from Jesus Page 24/7, Robbie Falk is up writing a notebook right now. Mike Nemes has our Flash Gamer up. Paul Jones will be getting in touch with recruits in the coming days as well. Steve, you have your photo gallery, other things coming up, and I'll have the game start at some point so we can get out of here and get back to Starkville and get ready for an open date. So from the Plains on Auburn, for Steve Robertson, Robbie Falk, this is David Murray.